Hi, good morning. It's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, business briefers. And I've got a fine, fantastic panel today, which I'd like to introduce you to. There's John Workman from Senior Partner at BPE Solicitors. John, you'd like to say hello?
Morning.
Talitha Nelson, the CEO of Gloucestershire Community Foundation Trust.
Morning.
David Jones from Evans Jones, Managing Director and Head of Planning.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, good morning. And there's Sam Holliday, Federation of Small Business Development Manager for Gloucestershire, Bristol, Bath, South Gloucestershire, and this side of the planet.
That's me. Good to see you, Mark.
Welcome to the news. Right, news reviews. Sam, what have you got in the newspapers for us this morning?
Well, you can't get away from it. Everywhere it seems to be about Dominic Cummings this morning. And I just wonder whether that's a story that's of more interest to the political chattering classes than to the public at large. And I say that as someone that really should find this interesting. And I'll tell you why, for two reasons. One, I've always loved politics. I'm like you, Mark. I really love the whole ins and outs of it. And secondly, my favourite television programme is a programme called The West Wing, which is set around a fictional American president, and it's about the people around him, and it's about how important they are. So all the ingredients for this story are right up my street. But I'm afraid I just can't get excited by it, really, because it just feels like there's so much else going on in the world. There's presidential changes, hooray. There's the potential of a vaccine. There's various news coming out about coronavirus, and it just feels a little bit tittle-tattly. Now, I know that people like Dominic Cummings lead the direction of government to a certain extent, but really they're not the people we vote for. So we should focus more on the people that we do vote for. So although the papers are full of it, I suspect a lot of people, like me possibly, will look at the headline of page 1 and 2 and then flick to the rest of the news. So very important if you're a Tory party politician and people who love this stuff, but really that important to the people of Gloucestershire? I don't know. Bit of an unknown one.
I totally agree. John, what have you plucked out of this morning's papers?
Well, controversially, I'm going to pick the same story, and I'm going to totally disagree with both of you. I mean, as you rightly say, Sam, the papers are full of it, but I think it really does matter. I think that if you look at the time since Boris came into power, clearly derailed by COVID, and most people would be. But the way in which communication has been handled, the way in which policy has been handled, the way in which Cummings wasn't fired, as he absolutely must have been, for breaching the first lockdown regulations, I'm afraid that I think that the country deserves competent, measured, thought through government, and I believe firmly that we're in lockdown partly because leaks were made to bounce us, and specifically the Prime Minister, into it. Whether or not you believe the data justified it, I don't know that the data justified it. I just know the data was wrong. Yeah, I think it does matter. I think that actually having harmonious, sensible West Wing style government, if you like, also one of my favorite programs. I think the best political drama ever made.
Right.
Please, could we have Jed Bartlett as Prime Minister? But I think it does matter. I think what happens at heart of government affects not just Gloucestershire but the whole nation. And having this at the same time as COVID and the what hopefully the last phase of Brexit negotiations is a massive distraction. It cannot help. But the hope is that the stable will be cleared, and irrespective of political views, we get rational government.
I do agree with the Cummings thing when he went off up north, and I think that was a massive sea change where people suddenly thought, well, if they can do it, we can do it, and that lost confidence in the lockdown. Talitha, what have you picked out? Thanks, John. What have you picked out for us this morning?
Well, it's really easy to go down that sort of route of the doom and gloom because it is, the press isn't easy at the moment with coronavirus and numbers. But actually, I'm really quite encouraged at a report that a survey's been done. It's called the Remember a Charity poll. survey. 2,000 people have been surveyed and found that 1 in 10 adults in the UK offered their time to a charitable organisation during the pandemic. And actually what's really interesting, the silver linings out of what we're all going through, there's a real human spirit that's for the first time probably coming together more than ever. And it's really interesting because part of it brought up in the survey, it showed people had, it found 2 out of 10 British adults had got in touch with organisations and groups to show interest in working. Now, these are people that have never volunteered before, or never thought about giving back to community before. And they're huge numbers, absolutely amazing. So I think some of the charity piece, I think the third sector has always been in the shadows of the public and private sectors. And actually now, for the first time, the third sector is having a real light shone just on the value of the VCS organisations that actually in and around where statutory services aren't able to provide, little organisations and people are doing their bit. So that's the bit I wanted to start off with, just the encouraging piece around community and coming together. So I do hope the government catches up with that.
I totally agree. The amount of fantastic work that's been done here in Gloucester by so many businesses, by so many people, is actually breathtaking. And, you know, it's, just been absolutely brilliant. Lots and lots of people writing into us, lots of people supporting. Thanks so much for this first break one. David, what have you picked out for us, please?
Well, I think sort of echoing sort of John's view, I would certainly on the Cummings story. I'm not going to mention that one because I think there's a bigger story. But
you do look like you're in a padded cell there, by the way. Just
thank you. Well, we can cast judgment on that at the end, perhaps, Mark. Well, I think we mustn't forget the political drama, the thick of it, and Malcolm Tucker, and it does feel partly as if we're living through that now. You know, there's a lot of truth in comedy, but I think going through the papers this morning, there's a bigger story. There's a bigger story than Cummings. What's the bigger story? Today, John Lewis have released their Christmas advert. And let's not face it, that is the event of the year, and it will look as if Talitha and I are working together here. But that's the advert. It was only broadcast at 6 o'clock this morning. Is very much about showing the love and paying it forward. And I think they have certainly grasped, you know, the will of the country to, you know, be more charitable and perhaps be more loving and pay it forward. So, you know, I think, you know, it's always a big event each year. It will probably be overshadowed by Cummings, but there we are. So I
personally like the Aldi advert myself a little bit better. I was watching, what's his name, the Silly Carrot?
Kevin.
I love him. Well, I picked out a story that I'd like to share with you, actually, and there's just another one that can lead quite nicely on to John and a bit of a debate, and it's this one actually with Sarah Ferguson. So Sarah Ferguson, she's part of the Weight Watchers again. This is a story that's in the Sun. The reason I picked it out is that I've actually met Sarah Ferguson twice. Once when I was in the Air Force, and can you remember she actually learned to fly helicopters? Anyone remember that? Anyway, she was obviously married to Prince Andrew. Anyway, she learned to fly helicopters at RAF Benson, and I happened to be a young chef at the time, and so I used to have to make her lunch and sandwiches, and the time I used to put them on a silver platter, and I took it down, and I only actually met her once. But then years later, I was at the I think it was the BBC Good Home show or Covent Garden or something like this, for one of the gardening shows, and she was there doing a speech for charity. And at the very end, I went over to her. There was no security guard, no one around her, and I introduced myself. And I said, you know, hello, I'm Mark Owen, and did you know I made you sandwiches when I was in the Air Force? And she was terribly nice. And so ever since then, I've been a big fan. I don't care what she's done. She's just wonderful to me. So
Mark, we're going to call you the Sandwich Man.
If you like. I mean, called lots and lots of other names. Well, as you're big in the screen now, Tally, how's it going in the charity sector at the moment? I think what we'll do is we'll work around each of you. How's it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It is really tough. I think just like businesses, charities are businesses. There's money in, there's money out, and there's a delivery of services. And what I guess the feedback that we've had, we're just conducting research, and some early signs are really interesting. But essentially, it's more costly now to deliver services through the pandemic than it was. But actually, revenue streams have dried up. So the bucket shaking and the events and all the revenue generating activities have declined, and so it's really tough. So we're just doing some research in the county, and some of those early signs about how much in terms of reserves and how long those charities are going to survive. So there is an element of doom and gloom, but there's also some really inspiring information that's coming through on that research. And those organisations that have a bit more stability or have a bit more of a long-term view, there's some really interesting information that's come through. So as a sector, and like business, there's an element of competition. You know, charities need to find money, and that breeds a little bit more competition rather than collaboration. And the number one response from a question we asked our charities was, how could we help and support you in other ways other than money? And what came back was the opportunity to collaborate and partnership with other organisations. And that has been an incredible change in the last 6 months. That way of working in the county, and people starting to reach out and communicate and think about others. So that collaboration over competition is very exciting, and I think a real opportunity for us to work better together. So yes, there's real elements of realism as in business, but there's real elements of opportunity.
Fantastic. John, what about BPE? Obviously, you've been leading that for how many years now?
Oof. Anyway, moving on. 15. At least 15, possibly 17. I can't quite remember.
So what's been the main impact at BP, and what's the key things that you've learned from it?
Well, in terms of COVID, well, I mean, the dramatically when the lockdown, the first lockdown was clearly coming, we were out of the building, everybody working from home, everybody supplied with kit, working remotely within 48 hours, and that was, yeah, I have to say, I was not directly responsible for that. I hope we have people who know what they're doing for that, but the ability to do that, to flip and pivot completely to outside the office, well, it proved the disaster recovery plan we spent all those years not reading actually worked. So that was dramatic. We made heavy use of furlough in the early days, and then brought people back as we could. Yeah, so I mean, I think for us, yeah, it proved the resilience of the business. We had huge goodwill from our people. We put everybody on a 4-day week, everybody on 80% earnings for a period. Everybody signed up for that. There was, yes, of course, you're saving jobs. Of course, we'll do it. There was, yeah, real sacrifice, real hardship, but actually, we are now, and have been for some time, back at full strength and powering forward. And I think that's yeah, the policies we put in place, the reaction, the quick reaction, based, well, in all fairness, quite largely on my visceral and unpleasant experience of the credit crunch, actually has put us in a pretty good place. So, not being complacent about it. We're planning for growth. We're planning to go forward, but we've weathered the storm.
Well, that's really great to hear. So, same question to David. Actually, David, obviously you guys from Evans Jones been really pushing your brand, pushing your name. Fair play to you. Done a great job. What's been the key thing for you over the pandemic?
Yeah, I think my experience absolutely mirrors John's. We both worked through the recession of 07, 08, 09, etc. And we're probably both scarred a bit by that, and that your experiences influence what you do and how you react to the next potential catastrophe. I think we probably cut too hard, but I think that was probably quite natural. You didn't know what was going to happen lockdown 1 and how seriously it would affect the economy. So we were able to bring people back pretty quickly, but we went through the same process, so reduction in salary, shortened week, some furloughing, but then quickly realised actually we then haven't got enough people to do the work and brought them back. Sector-wise, I think, again, from the last recession, we decided to invest. Well, we've spread our client base significantly since the last recession, so we're much less exposed to a single sector. So that has served us well. And I think investing in technology, not through any plan that this was going to happen, but we did invest heavily in technology and remote working anyway. And I think to attract staff to Cheltenham, it's something we found we had to do anyway. We have to offer remote working and flexi working anyway, and I've got staff, living all over, within 60, 70 miles, and a lot of those won't be in the office, pre-pandemic full time. So those systems that we put in place to deal with recruitment have actually served us really, really well, during the pandemic. Clients, it's been, a varied reaction across the piece. Certainly the private education sector were pretty panicky to begin with. I think we're seeing that come back now. Our hotel clients are, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Travelodge did a CVA with their landlords, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out in the long term. But we've got 6 Travelodge hotels being delivered this year, so they're still going, and I think they will see a fairly quick bounce back once the pandemics and lockdowns are over. So yeah, it's been okay. Thank you.
Sam, thanks very much, Dave. Sam, Federation of Small Business. What's the kind of feeling out there for the small business community now? Because I know you do those big Zoom meetings on a Friday. What's your feedback now?
Well, it's interesting. I've thought this before, that the coronavirus is probably the nearest that we and perhaps the younger generation will ever get to experience a war. And I mean that in the sense that every person who went through the war had their own individual story. And it'll be the same with coronavirus. There's themes I heard from David, there's themes I heard from John and Talitha, which I recognise. But every single business is different, and every single business has gone through different sort of stages. But if I could plug Punchline, funnily enough, there was a report yesterday. The FSB's just done a report about business confidence in the Southwest. And as you can imagine, the top line is that business confidence continues to be down. But there was some encouraging signs in it. And one of those, I wrote it out because it surprised me, was that 18% of SMEs in the Southwest that were polled have let people go during this period, which it sounds awful. But, and this is a really big but as far as I can see, 15% have actually increased staff. So the differential is only 3%, and that's the smallest in the country. So, and I hear this a lot. One of my FSB colleagues, who Mark knows, Russell Warner, he runs a business part at Stonehouse near Stroud, which has got office space for lots of small businesses. He's got a waiting list. He's got people who are taking staff on. He's got orders coming in. So it's not all the doom and gloom that is actually being portrayed out there. But for a lot of businesses, it is still very, very hard. And there's still a whole section of people, and they actually try to call themselves the forgotten limited. Self-employed people, we've had this discussion before, Mark, who pay themselves in dividends or who didn't get tax for the 2018 year, which have received literally nothing. And how many of them are going to come through, I don't know. But the one thing I will say, the difference between this lockdown and the other one was lots, but is that the first lockdown, my phone never stopped ringing from members who were worried and were panicking and wondering what to do and where to get advice and support. It's been relatively quiet, and I think people have understand the situation a little bit more now. They know where to get help and support, and hopefully there's a limit to this. It's going to end, and the sooner the better, obviously, for everyone.
It's funny you use the reference to the war. I totally agree. I think that goes back to the media. If we had this media during Dunkirk would be completely buggered, to be honest with you. The way the media have handled this has been absolutely scandalous. One of the things I'd like to go on to actually is a story that appeared in today's Times, funny enough, and I'd like to ask you first, John, about this. It says divorce firm gags employee who leaked details about a cardigan ban. And the reason I ask you about this is that, and I'll ask all of you, have you ever had to ban it, ban anything in the workplace in particular? I had a guy who kept insisting on coming in wearing flip-flops. And, we moved big boxes and all the rest of it. And he just didn't understand. He didn't understand that he just couldn't wear flip-flops going up and down the stairs. Anyway, that was the thing I banned. John, Have you had to ban anything in the workplace? And is that okay? Is that okay for a
Well,
law
I'm going to tell a story which you may decide you'd rather I didn't, but you may or may not know that as a firm, and me in particular, we have a very long association with Estonia. I'm the honorary consul in the southwest of the Midlands for the Republic of Estonia, which is a privilege and honour and sometimes quite a lot of fun. But we had an exchange student over who had many qualities, one of which was that she was an ex-Miss Estonia, which if you've been there, you will know is not an easy prize to get. We were in an old Georgian building at the time of the prom, and as she walked up the stairs, I realised that A, her clothing was in practical terms see-through, and B, there wasn't very much of it. So I did send her home, and to talk to, I was 40, I think, at the time, or something like that. So it's not good for an old man's heart. Please go home and put something on. I think that might be the only time we've ever sent anybody home. We do have, obviously, we have dress codes, but we're pretty relaxed generally. Yeah, I think. I mean, in COVID, nobody cares. You come in in flip-flops and shorts for if you're coming in. Obviously, we dress appropriately when we have clients.
Well, I mean, you look great in a waistcoat, mate. Waistcoats are really in, you know. Waistcoats are really in. I mean, you don't know, but I could be sitting here in my pajamas. No,
we'll stand up and find out.
What you were?
Well, I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to stand up. Dave, what about you? You know, Evans Jones, have you ever had to change policy?
Yeah,
anybody like that?
Dress code is the I think in Britain is the hardest one to crack, because everybody has their own impression and standard of what is acceptable in a business environment. We are pretty relaxed as an office. I will make an admission. I did write a clause in our company manual once, and I think it was when sort of body piercing was very popular, and you know, we were seeing a lot of nose piercings and lip piercings, and I didn't think that was really terribly appropriate to a professional office. So I did write. I thought, well, I can't just say no nose piercings, because that would probably be discriminatory and, you know, against people's personal right to expression. So I had a policy that which is no longer in our guidance, but said you can have piercings, but they've got to be at least a head width apart. So I thought, well, you know, at least most people will have perhaps an earring in either ear, head width apart, but obviously nose, ear, contrary to policy. So that was my very lame attempt at control. It's no longer in our policy before
I'm sure the lawyer amongst us will know better than I do where that stands, but there you go.
It would be unacceptable now.
We've got 5 minutes left, so let's just go through. Have you picked out any other stories, Dave? Have you got anything else? Just...
Yeah, there was one I picked up from The Guardian, actually. So this is a report from, or reporting Deutsche Bank, who are suggesting that they will tax employees for the privilege of working at home. So they're proposing a 5% tax on home workers, which is a little counterintuitive, I think. I can see the rationale. I mean, they say, well, people aren't travelling to work, they're not, you know, going out and buying their coffee and sandwiches, so they're saving money on the one hand. I mean, what I would say is, yeah, they're also probably having to spend money in heating their home through the day and you know, using the home telephone or whatever. So I don't think it's going to gain much traction with
you can see that happening here, can't you? I wish she's got a
well, I think there's some wider issues probably with home working. You know, we all allow our staff to home work, but you know, are we then going to get the complaints coming in? Oh, I've got backache because my home chair isn't right, and you know, my posture's wrong. You know, people must take responsibility, but it's something we take very seriously in the office. And you know, every new employee has a, you know, desk analysis and posture, you know, advice, etc. But you know, that all goes out the window when they're working at home. So you know, I think there are some issues around that which are going to be quite interesting going forward.
Yeah, I think moving forward, you can imagine the sort of, you know, legal sort of problems that maybe companies will have as people are bent over their kitchen tables or sofas or where does it stand? John, have you picked out any other stories for us this morning from the Nationals? Or
well, I'm going to give you one from your very own Punchline, but I'm also going to point out, and this is a little bit of older man stuff. The AC/DC have released a new album, and apparently it's brilliant. I'm going to go and buy it. The story of the Guardian about how the hell did they get away with that when they're all 110 and then most of them are dead, but nonetheless that's quite entertaining. But the punchline thing is about the Cheltenham Innovation Hub. I think that's really exciting, and obviously in collaboration with Hub 8 and all that good stuff. But I think that investment will generate huge returns for the town, for the county, and for the country, and I think that I applaud that. In Estonia, they've done. There are places you can go in Estonia which have funded unicorn businesses like TransferWise, Fundabeen, people like that. And I've been there and seen it, and it's buzzing, it's exciting, and it's dead cool. And it's and if we can get some of that vibe going in this new centre, that'd be brilliant.
Well, I totally agree with you. I'm really excited about the Cheltenham cyber hub. The whole thing that is going on with Cheltenham is just absolutely groundbreaking, and really going to put Gloucestershire back firmly on the map. It's really exciting. David, have you picked out any last stories? Have you got anything from Punch at all that have caught your eye?
I think we're going on from Punchline and perhaps a good news story. And as you know, I talk a lot about sort of recovery of the high street and how we can do that. But there's a report on Laithwaite's sort of online success and the uplift they've had over the period. And that doesn't.
Have you spent a fortune there, Dave?
I have, yeah. It's all down to me, actually. During, but I think that's not high street, but it does show the strength that people are still willing to spend and are still getting out there. The key we have to get is that mix and that blend between online sales and physical sales, and that we still very much have to crack that one.
Yes, well, you're an expert on the high street, and what you're doing there sort of champion the way that maybe high street, the shops might have to be turned into living spaces.
Oh, totally.
I know that's something that you're quite passionate about, isn't it?
Well, I want there to be a high street, and I don't want us to turn into American cities where there's no real central core. There's a business core, but no central shopping core. I think it would be a retrograde step if we lost that. Retailing will be very different, but and we are. But even in Cheltenham, we're seeing new openings coming through now. So it will reinvent itself. The government still needs to be braver on allowing changes of use above ground floor level and total flexibility. But we are seeing some good things. Hub 8, as John mentioned, is a great example. That was space originally allocated for retail, now co-working space, and it's full.
Yeah,
they've sold every space.
I know it's brilliant, isn't it? It's and hopefully it'll bring people back into the town as well.
You bring people and they will spend. That's my mantra.
Yes.
It's not all about retail. It's just about people. Get people there.
Right, but Tally's back. Talitha's back as well. Hi, Talitha. I know you live out in the country there, so at one point I was quite hurt. I thought, oh my goodness, she's done a runner. But you're back, and we're going to wrap up. I'm just going to do ask you one question really. Is there anything that's caught your eye at all over the last week on our website and Punchline?
Yeah, I mean, you probably know more about it than I, but I love the fact that we've been supported with the Cheltenham Innovation Hub. So I'm sure David and all of you will know more about it, but it looks really hopeful. There's a lot of development, as you say, going on in Cheltenham, and I'm really pleased to hear about that. It looks like it's a £5 million investment, and it looks really exciting. So great to see that on your paper.
Great stuff. Sam, have you got last thing to add to anything?
Yeah, just a couple of quickies. One from Punchline. I'm glad we got Talitha here, but the story about Ecclesiastical Insurance giving £120,000 to charities in the 12 days of Christmas giving. I think that's fabulous. I'm a trustee of Gloucester Food Bank, so I'll be supporting them. Just on that point, because Talitha did raise it about the amount of support that people have given charities throughout COVID. The money that's come into Gloucester Food Bank without us actually asking for it has been phenomenal, and it's been needed because the need has gone through the roof, absolutely through the roof. So well done, Ecclesiastical Insurance, big supporters of those. And secondly, just if you're wondering what to do this weekend, on Sunday, The Crown restarts. Now, if anyone doesn't know The Crown, it's an absolute beautiful piece of television, but the headline in the Eye today is The Crown is brilliant, but don't believe a word of it. Now, I think like you, Mark, I'm a big history fan, and listening to John talk about Estonia, I'm currently reading a book about called Hitler and Stalin, very lightweight, but absolutely fantastic book, and Estonia, because it gets mentioned in there. But every time I watch The Crown, I end up going on to Google thinking, did that really happen? Did that really happen? And it is, at its best, absolutely fabulous. But my only concern with the forthcoming series, it focuses very much on the Diana era, which becomes a little bit more soapy. I think in the 50s and 60s, we were seeing more genuine politics and stewards and all kinds of stuff. So, but brilliant television, it really expensively made. And I applaud Netflix, because when they made it, they said, we're going to make it as good as it possibly could be. And if we don't get the massive amount of numbers, it doesn't matter. We just want to make a really good show. But thankfully, it does get the good numbers. So watch The Crown.
And that's a great way to finish on a really good show. Pity we didn't achieve it today. Thank you all. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, John. Thanks to Tally. Thanks, Sam, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you very soon.
Good to see you all.
Punchline. Bye.